William Tyndale, a country priest, had accomplished the following. He had learned 2 languages. He had translated the New Testament into English. He had secretly printed it and orchestrated its delivery to England. All in the face of authorities to whom an English Bible could only be the work of the devil.
The authorities couldn't track Tyndale down, they couldn't track his Bible down, and above all, they couldn't track his words down. They couldn't silence him, because he brought to them a simplicity, a clarity, a power that's still unequaled. And they were memorable words, and they're phrases that still echo with us. Eat, drink, and be merry, the salt of the earth, our Father which art in heaven. Tyndale's Bible spread like wildfire. There was nothing that More and the church could do to stamp it out. More complained there were night schools of heretics where people read it aloud to each other. They complained that people were learning to read precisely to read it.
Who is this Tyndale? You say he is a scholar out of Oxford who became a hedge priest, preacher of clods and bumpkins. He's blown about like a weathercock on his father's barn by every new doctrine. He's now hurried to Germany to be Luther's harlot. But I will pursue him to the world's end. These are the devil's books. The ports must be watched, and the houses of all suspected men be searched. It is a full, deep, and stinking pestilence which must be rooted out. If this Tyndale doesn't amend himself, he's like to find a firebrand burning at his back which all the waters of the world will not quench. They say he cannot be found, but slips past like some wayward ghost. But he is no spirit or apparition. He is a man of flesh, and I will fish him out.
This life of constant flight was a nightmare. It would certainly prevent the completion of his task. To translate the rest of the Bible, Tyndale needed a place where he could hide, a place that offered anonymity, all the texts he wished to work from, and the most advanced printing techniques available. Where could he go?
Well, Brian, we have a bird's eye view here of Antwerp. The cathedral was there in Tyndale's time. It is huge. It's the largest Gothic cathedral of the Low Countries.
But that's a symbol of Catholic power. That is a symbol of the might of the church that he was taking on. So, in a way, coming to a city as Catholic as Antwerp, he was going straight into the lion's den, wasn't he? So there must have been powerful reasons that persuaded him into the den. The lion must have had a lot to offer him.
The printing would have been one of the main reasons. In effect, it was Europe's 3rd printing center after Venice and Paris. This was a port that had 4 times the tonnage of London, so it was a major seaport. Right here where we stand, the English ships would have been loaded, and Tyndale would have been able to smuggle the small leaves of his Bible to England using the commerce between England and Antwerp.
Everything about Antwerp was ideal. Everything apart from the fact that the Low Countries were a personal dominion of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, the most Catholic majesty of them all. In 1526, the war between Protestant and Catholic was in its infancy, but time was passing, and as it did so, Charles V moved closer to pursuing Protestants unto death. In the Low Countries, thousands would burn. For Tyndale, it was a matter of timing. One day, the risks of remaining in Antwerp would be too great. But in 1526, Antwerp had it all, including a maze of cellars where goods awaiting export were stored near the waterfront, a maze in which the pages of Bibles could readily be hidden.
And if you were the agent of the Inquisitor, and you had to find those tiny leaves of Tyndale's Bibles hidden between the other goods, well, good luck to you, mate.
The books were almost impossible to find in Antwerp. But in England, the Bibles and their owners were much easier to arrest. In the autumn of 1526, in St. Paul's Cathedral, a solemn mass was held before copies of Tyndale's New Testament were ritually burnt on the steps outside. Their owners were publicly humiliated, and in an impassioned sermon, the Bishop of London denounced the book for its errors, 3,000 and more. So, what were these errors?
There was no Pope in the New Testament. There were no saints in the New Testament. There were no relics in the New Testament. There was no purgatory in the New Testament. There was no Catholic Church in this New Testament. It was a book well worth burning.
But it was only the books that burnt. Cardinal Wolsey was no fanatic. He did not burn the heretics themselves. To him, their errors were only misunderstandings and not a matter for the stake. The king was happy enough to let Wolsey set the penalties, and in any case he was otherwise occupied with a woman he had met at her family home in Kent. After 18 years of marriage to the first of his 6 wives, Catherine of Aragon, Henry's attention had turned to the young Anne Boleyn. This was no simple infidelity. This relationship would change all the rules by which England lived. And there might be opportunities for Tyndale too, for Anne Boleyn was a Protestant.
Anne Boleyn, fresh back from the French court, young, charismatic, beautiful perhaps, but I don't think the beauty is important. People at the time simply said she was striking, not beautiful, and clearly what they were getting was intelligence. Here was an intensely able person with agendas. One of the agendas clearly was to get the king and to become queen. Quickly she fascinated him. She fascinated him probably for sexual reasons, the fact she wouldn't go all the way, but much more, she quarrelled with him. She flirted, she did everything a mistress should, and she was so clever, so intelligent, so sparkling. And that made Henry utterly enslaved. We can tell that because of the love letters. Just listen to this. Here's the tyrant taken captive by love. My own sweetheart, these shall be to advertise you of the great loneliness that I find here since your departing. I think your kindness and my fervence of love causeth it, wishing myself, especially an evening, in my sweetheart's arms, whose pretty dugs I trust shortly to kiss. Dugs his breasts, of course. Written with the hand of him that was, is, and shall be yours by his will, Henricus Rex.